If you tuned in on last week, you know we began a series, and the series is based on the book News Chaser that was just released, and it is a compilation. It has various contributors to it, and we had last week Anne Marie Waterman. She was my first guest from the book, and this week is my second guest from that same book, News Chaser. Just released. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the local retailers. You can order it, or if you can walk into your store, you'll see it there on the shelf. Book signings are beginning to occur, and guests are beginning to appear on radio shows such as this. And my guest this morning is Jaimee Swift, and she is a PhD candidate at, again, Howard University. Last week I had a good time playing with the word Howard versus Harvard, because in the African American community, Howard is considered the Harvard, and I have had the opportunity to be on both campuses. I've had the opportunity to study at Harvard, and I've had the opportunity to visit and peruse the Howard campus, as I've had friends who graduated from there, as well as family members who live in that area. Having an affinity for storytelling, Jaimee Swift is a truth seeker at heart, holding a Bachelor of Arts in Communications and Master of Arts in Political Science from Temple University and Howard University, respectively. Swift is passionate about racial and social justice, gender and health equity. She's been published in an array of media outlets, including the Huffington Post, the Grio, for Harriet, OkayAfrica or OkayAfrica, Blavity, Heed Magazine, Salon.com, LA Progressive, the U.S. Fund for UNICEF, and Montgomery Media. She is a PhD student at Howard University, studying the intersections of race, gender, ethnicity, and politics within the Afro-Brazilian women's movement. All right now. She is also editor-at-large for the Hilltop newspaper, the student voice of Howard University since 1924, which was started by renowned author, writer, and Harlem Renaissance extraordinaire Zora Neale Hurston. Swift is the first editor-at-large in the history of the newspaper. Prior to her doctoral program, Swift was a Global Health Corps Fellow, which is a movement that mobilizes global leaders in the fight for health equity. In this capacity, she served as the Communications and Youth Advocacy Officer at Together for Girls, a global public-private partnership that works with 5 United Nations agencies, the U.S. and Canadian government, and private sector organizations to end violence against children, with a specific focus on ending violence against girls. She also served as the managing editor of Safe magazine, the first ever digital magazine focused on the global epidemic of violence against children, engaging young people from all over the world to write for the magazine. Swift also created successful social media campaigns and partnered with global organizations such as the U.S. Fund for UNICEF's End Trafficking Project, Youth for Change, and the Special Olympics. And one other tidbit that is not in her bio that I know from our mutual friend, it is my understanding Jaimee also interned with Wolf Blitzer at CNN. So welcome to the Reading Circle microphone, none other than Jaimee Swift. Jaimee, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Thank you.
Thank you for all your contributions and everything that you do. As we spoke on yesterday, like I said, my heart is always encouraged because we hear so much about what young people are not doing. I'm always encouraged whenever I have the opportunity to see and witness what young people are doing.
Thank you so much. It's very encouraging. And yes, there's a lot of us out here trying to do it. So thank you.
No, you're absolutely right. And like I said, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to say, going for your PhD. Now, what year are you in? Because I know that's usually like a 4 to 6 year process. What year are you in, or shall I say, where are you in your journey?
So I'm currently a second-year PhD student or candidate. I'm about to go into candidacy next spring, officially. But yes, so I was a master's student at Howard and decided to take a year off and then come back. So I'm very, very excited to be officially on my way to be done. And it's like my friend says, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you can't sprint through this, y'all. Y'all got to take your time. So I'm excited to be where I am, definitely.
No, you're absolutely right. It is a marathon, and you have to always kind of keep the end in mind, because I know it can get discouraging in terms of whenever you're pursuing these various degrees. I hold 2 masters as well as the bachelor's and a whole bunch of other certifications and trainings. As I said, did some coursework up at Harvard and done some coursework at Princeton. And so it is always kind of like you got to keep the end in mind. Otherwise, you will kind of just say, you know what, forget this. Why am I doing this?
Yes, definitely. And it's very so much more mental and psychological rather than it's physical too, but it's more mental, and you have to encourage yourself and get over this imposter syndrome that, you may feel that you don't deserve to be here or you faked your way to get here. No, you deserve to be here. You worked hard to be here, and you have to look at the, end and know that, God brought you this far, so definitely you can make it through.
No, absolutely right. And I'm looking at your history and your background. Where did this whole philosophy and mindset and how you approach life and the organizations you've gotten involved with? We're going to work our way up to you getting involved with News Chaser, but I want to give the listening audience an opportunity to kind of get a feel for who Jaimee Swift is in terms of like what shaped because I know what kind of shaped how I believe. A lot of the things that I'm seeing there, I'm right in line with that. There are just certain things like for me, I'm teeter-tottering on whether to go back to get the doctorate or not, but I tell people, if I go back to get it, I could care less about people calling me doctor. I really could. If they don't call me doctor, even if I get it, I could care less. But one of the things that would drive me to get it is because I can. As an African-American male, there was a time whenever it was a true struggle for us to go back to school or to go to school. So for me, one of the driving factors would be, I'm going to get that doctorate just because. Kind of what shaped you into doing what you do, your majors, political science, so forth and so on?
Yes, so even when I was a child, I've always been the little radical one, always questioning the structures that be, questioning my parents on why they think the way they think, and even getting, a little pop for questioning them too much. But I've always been always wondering why certain inequities are happening, or questioning why people were always treated differently, to the point where my dad called me Jaimee X. Like he still calls me Jaimee X, like Malcolm. And from there, I'm seeing inequities growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood and being, 1 or 3 or 4 black young people at a school and having to face, racial circumstances in second grade. I started questioning, why are these things happening? And my mom gave me her little ebony encyclopedias when she was younger, and she told me to read, and I read. And that really formulated how I think about Black political thought, racial equity, social justice, gender equality, Black political consciousness. And so this is why I am so, passionate about equity and social justice and equality for all. And that's what definitely has shaped my path in terms of, equity in the African diaspora. I'm looking at Brazil, which is has the largest Black populace outside the African continent. So these are all shaping my way I think, how I live, how I act, how I approach certain circumstances. So shout out to my parents for, really molding me into the woman I am today.
I know that's right. And I'm glad to hear you. I heard you say a key word there, and that was read. And as you know, the title or the name of this show is The Reading Circle with Marc Medley, and the whole impetus of the show was to encourage people to read more. I really don't care what they read, as long as they were reading more. And in a technological society, sometimes that can be challenging because there's so many other distractions. But as a child, I read a lot as well, and I attribute that, along with my parents' tutelage and guidance as well, as to where I was able to get to this point also. But I try to help people understand this whole notion of how important reading is. And at this point, we're in like an academic or an education type phase. We went through industrial, agricultural, we went through all these various stages, and now we're kind of like in that academic education stage where if you don't have some type of education, you really are going to be lost. As a matter of fact, I think Anne Marie and I talked about it last week, this whole notion of the haves and the have-nots. This education thing will be the thing that can weed folks out. It always has been, but it's coming back around, which we're going to talk a little bit about later whenever we get to your contribution in the book. I'm going to take a short break to share some information with the listening audience. But listening audience, you know the routine. Get on every last, and I'm not going to name them this week because I want to get back to the interview, but get on every last one of your social media sites and let someone know that Jaimee Swift is on the air with me on gobrave.org, where we can be heard anywhere around the world, and here in the Wayne, New Jersey area on WP 88.7 FM radio.
Didn't feel safe anymore at home.
Every year, tens of thousands of youth experience homelessness.
The possibility of sleeping out on a park bench, it's not something that a 15-year-old should have to think about.
1-800-RUNAWAY provides 24-hour access to a nationwide network of housing and support services.
They felt such warmth, they felt comfort, they felt safe.
Call 1-800-RUNAWAY. Go to 1-800-RUNAWAY.org or text 66008. We can end youth homelessness.
You wanted to be a teacher when you were little, but as you grew up, things changed. Teaching just didn't seem like the best option anymore, so you decided to become something else. But what would your 12-year-old self say? Interesting and innovative things are happening in teaching today, so it's time to put it back on your list. Don't try to convince yourself otherwise. You had it right the first time.
Find out how you can make more at teach.org. Make more. Teach. Brought to you by Teach and the Ad Council.
My name is Diamonds. I am a radio DJ in North Jersey. I broadcast on the frequency of 88.7 FM. I will be on the air every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. when the sun is setting in the sky. If you are out there, if anyone is out there, I can provide music, I can provide entertainment. If there's anybody out there, anybody, please.
Club Melting Pot. Every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Only on WP 88.7 FM Brave New Radio.
You're listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley on Brave New Radio.
Yes, indeed you are. You are listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley. We come to you live on Saturday mornings, and we are indeed live again this morning as my guest is calling in from the Washington, D.C. area, Jaimee Swift. And we were talking about, we're kind of working our way through Jaimee's thought process as to kind of how and why she thinks the way that she thinks. And I love it, by the way, because I'm in that same ilk. As a matter of fact, one of the things, Jaimee, I'm constantly hit with is, oh, you think too deep. People, I don't think that was the thought process behind why that happened. I'll give you the example. I've given the example on the air before. Years ago, you probably were a teenager at the time. Denzel Washington, as well as Halle Berry, both of them won Oscars. And first time in history, an African-American male and an African-American woman at the same time won the Oscar award. Now, I didn't have an issue with them winning the Oscar per se, but I did have an issue with what they won the Oscars for, because both of them had played extremely powerful roles prior to what they won the awards for. Denzel won the award. Now, mind you, Denzel had already been in Glory. He'd already played. I think he'd done Malcolm X by that time. If not, it was shortly thereafter, but I think he'd done it by that time, as well as some other extremely powerful. Same thing with Haley, Losing Isaiah, Dorothy Dandridge, so forth and so on. What they won those awards for, Denzel won it for being a road cop in Training Day, and Haley won hers for stripping butt naked in Monsters Ball. That's what they won their awards for. And I was incensed. And when I would discuss it with people, they're like, oh, you think too deep. I said, no, you got to take a look at that. You got to look at the message that's sending, because this gets into the conscious and the subconscious. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later when we talk about the eugenics. This gets into the conscious and the subconscious messages that are being sent. Because that message that was being sent was, as an African-American male, you had to be crooked, or you had to be a thug. And as an African-American female, you had to be a hoochie, a whore, or as the kids can say, a hoe, or a thought, or a stripper or whatever. I said that's what they were awarded those awards. That's the roles they were, which said to me. Now, again, the views and opinions heard here on this show are so are those of the hosts and guests. But what that said to me was America still sees African American people in those roles, and it was yet again confirmed yesterday in the commentary by the president, which we're going to work our way into. I don't know. Do you ever get hit with that? Well, Jaimee, you think too deep?
Yes, all the time. My parents, even though they encouraged me to, especially my father, encouraged me to, be, politically sound every time I go out to, participate in a protest or, say certain things. You're too radical. You're too, sometimes you're too black. Not too black, but too political. And not everything calls for that. However, everything does call for that because we live in a political society. And politics is who gets what, when, and how. And it's very much like you were saying before, the haves and the have-nots. And for the majority of our time here as Black Americans or Black people in America, we have been the have-nots. And we're going to change that to be, have the haves, if you would like to say. So, yes, definitely, I think too much. I talk about Black people too much from people I've met. It's not always about race all the time, when definitely, it is. So, yes, I feel you on that, but I'm not going to stop. I can't stop, won't stop until we get what we need and deserve.
No, absolutely right. And of course, there's more of us out there. Of course, there's never enough. But the bottom line is everything does come down to race. Whether people want to admit it or not, it does. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm going to, and I keep emphasizing this point, conscious versus subconscious, because of course, if you ask anybody straight up to their face, they're going to tell, oh no, that's not, oh no, I wouldn't, oh no, consciously you wouldn't, but subconsciously. And I think President Obama had said something along the lines about something else and everybody flipped out. And now we got this guy that says anything and everything and everybody poo-poos it and claps and Obama said something about the DNA. It's in your DNA, it's in the DNA or whatever, and everybody had a fit. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is, subconsciously, there is something there that says, I'm better than you. Subconsciously, there's something there that says, oh no, you were not as good. That's what I was saying earlier in terms of going back for the doctorate. If I ever do decide to go ahead and do it, it would be for that very reason. That, you know what? Yes, I can do a doctorate. I'm more than qualified. So that's that's the battle that we're constantly up against, and people try to pretend like it's not, but the truth of the matter, it is.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, so, sir. I definitely agree. I wholeheartely agree with your statement.
So now, as you're coming through, because like I said, I don't get the feel that you're, that old. I mean, as you're coming through
I'm
now,
young.
That's what I thought. And you're fighting this fight. I mean, do you feel like you're alone out there, or have you partnered up with enough? Because I'm looking at all the different organizations and things that you're doing here. Do you feel like you're fighting this battle alone, or do you have like enough people that are coming with you, or you're with enough people that's going that way?
I think it's both at this point in time. A lot of times I have a great base at Howard University where, even in these perilous times under this current presidential administration, there are a lot of us there that, we can talk about these issues that are affecting our communities, affecting Washington, D.C., because we're based there and around the world and, in the diaspora. But sometimes when you're in these organizations and you're the only Black person and you're a qualified Black person and you are articulate but, I can code switch and I have all these different things going on.
Right.
Sometimes it does feel very lonely because people look at you and subconsciously they're questioning you and unconsciously they're questioning you, like, how do you get here? Who do you
Absolutely.
think are getting your PhD? I've been questioned. Yep. I'm very young, so it's been a lot. So sometimes I do feel lonely, but I'm encouraged because God and my team, my friends and my family are pushing me and are behind me.
Well, keep going. Do not stop. Do not let anything deter you. One of, probably outside of Jesus and my father, right there in that list for me is, like with many people, is Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I have studied him up, down, left, right, sideways, you name it. I have studied Dr. King, and I'm always amazed and in awe. And I know he had a whole lot of people working with him, but he was kind of spearheading things. I am always amazed at what they went through during that time frame for us to get what we had gotten during that time. And now a lot of that is all kind of like, looks like it's trying to be reversed. And we cannot allow that to happen. So we need more people like us who are willing to speak up and say what needs to be said, do what needs to be done, write what needs to be written. We need more folks out there that's going to do that and not be afraid to do it. So I say all that to say, don't stop.
Thank you so much. I can't stop, won't stop. Yes. Thank you so much. And you don't stop either.
Oh, I don't intend to. I laugh because every time I go to anytime I've ever been in school, particularly at the college level, I always made sure I sat my behind front and center. I refused to sit in the back of the class. I sat in the front, and I made sure my professor knew I was there. And I've experienced that whole thing in a college class where I would give an answer, and the professor would look at me like, yeah, okay. And the Caucasian young man or woman sitting right next to me would give almost verbatim the same answer, and they would, oh, class, did you hear that? Oh, yes, that's and I'm sitting there like, that's the same thing I just said.
Yes.
And I had a young lady one time, a Caucasian young lady, and again, I need folks to understand, I am not anti-white. I am, however, pro-black. I need folks to understand that there is a difference. I love everybody, and when I give my commentary, it's not that I'm white bashing. I'm not. That's not the intent. But the reality is these things have occurred. I was sitting right there in the class. I gave my answer. The professor went to the next young lady, and she said, oh, Mark must have copied off of me because he could not have gotten that answer. And everybody in the class saw the expression of my body language and face, and they knew, because even everybody, like, oh, you okay? You okay? Come to find out, this young lady had not even done her homework. Yet, she was willing to play the race card. Because inherent in that was not only could not he have gotten that answer, what that was saying was, me as this Caucasian young lady, surely him as an African American male could not have come up with that unless he copied off of me. That's what, and that was during the same time when up in Boston, it was a couple, the man had killed his wife or whatever and tried to pin it on African Americans that didn't exist in the area that he claimed it happened. No, there was no African American, but he claimed African American, tried to mug them, whatever, kill them. So it is too much of that has gone on and continues to go on. And like as I said, people, if you ask them straight, they're going to tell you, oh no, but the truth of the matter is it's occurring. And now folks are feeling even more empowered and bold because of what's coming out of Washington. That's why the book, such as the one that you all are a part of, News Chaser, is so important. Because at least it is getting at various aspects of what's going on. Because the title of the book is News Chaser, The Rhetoric of Trump in Essays and Commentaries. And last week we talked about education with Anne Marie. And this week we're going to talk about racism and rhetoric. Trump, eugenics, and the black inferiority complex. Now, the reason I've been saying what I was saying, because I knew that's what the topic was going to be this morning. That's why I've been sharing what I've been sharing with you. Trump, eugenics, and the black inferiority complex by Jaimee A. Swift, doctoral student, Howard University Department of Political Science. How did you wind up getting involved with News Chaser?
So, yes, our beautiful mutual friend, Denise or Io, she came up to me and we're talking about, putting together a compilation of all of these, essays and book chapters about, what's going on in D.C., what's going on with Trump, and the various, negative and demoralizing, racist and sexist and all these other things that he was saying that going against, marginalized communities. We need to talk about this. These need to be put in the book and forever stamped so people can remember and not try to, whitewash this horrible time in our nation's history. And so I was like, yes, I'm for it. And I was so excited because I'm looking at more so the psychological implications of a Trump presidency, more so the psychological beginnings of Trump and how he has come up to think the way he thinks, which is very dangerous because subconsciously and consciously, like you were saying before, many white people believe that black people and other non-black people, other people of color, are inherently inferior.
Correct.
Mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, all these things, but psychologically that we can't be that smart. We can't be that articulate. We can't do this when, in fact, we built this nation. A lot of our inventions
that's correct
with are by black people or black people from the diaspora. So that is why I decided to really focus on that.
No, absolutely right. And that's why I shared the story of that young lady in my college class. And I didn't make that up. That's not made up. That's true. I can give stories, because you talk about this whole notion of being the only African American in a predominantly, if not all white or Caucasian setting. I've been in that experience most of my days, with the exception of whenever my first 15 years in corporate America was that. I was usually the only African American in a group. My undergrad days, I was usually the only African American in class, because my undergrad was in business administration. So it wasn't too many African Americans going through the business administration curriculum during that time frame. So I've experienced that over and over again. And then I left corporate America and came back into education. That's whenever I came back again to being surrounded by people of color, if you will. But for a long time, in terms of education, in terms of employment, being and I had this conversation with my daughter, because she comes to me, Dad, do you know I'm the only black that's in the group? I'm not surprised. I went through that, been there, done that. Me and your mom been there, done that. We know. And a lot of times that is the case. And the issue, that in and of itself is not the issue. The issue becomes exactly what you just said. If you're now viewing me as incompetent, or you're viewing me as someone who cannot produce when I walk in the door based on my skin color, that's where the issue comes up.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely, it does come up. I mean, I've been in settings where, in all white settings, in DC, where people are shocked that I am a PhD student, and I'm shocked that they're shocked that I'm a PhD student, because I'm surrounded by black excellence every single day. I've been surrounded by black excellence since I've come out the womb.
Correct.
So to me, it's not like they treat me as if I'm an anomaly or an alien, or
right.
The Negro exceptionalism or the talented tenth, when in fact I go to a school where there are brilliant black people there all
right.
the time. And I think that's the problem, because they're not exposed to it. They're exposed to the stereotypes, the negative imagery, like you're talking about Denzel Washington and Halle Berry. They're exposed to those things. They're not exposed to, black people who can do both, who can be educated and still, have fun and turn up and do all these things. They're used to one image.
But see, this is what okay, and I'm with you there. But the main thing that perplexes me with that is the fact that we just had an African American for 8 years in the highest seat in the world, the highest seat in the land. We just had that, but yet exactly what you just described still occurs. I just finished reading a book, and I'm trying to get her on the line as well. Carol Anderson, she wrote a book called White Rage. I don't know if you've read it or not, but read that. And the premise of that book is the higher African Americans go, the angrier the other population gets. So you would think it would be, everybody would be celebrating. The higher and the more we achieve, the fact that you're a PhD student, trust me, Jaimee, is pissing somebody off. So that's it's not even so much the shock, it's the anger. Like, how dare she, an African American female, be pursuing a PhD?
I agree with that. I've seen people get twisted and questioning other people on their staff why they didn't get their PhD or not pursuing their PhD. And I need to read that book, because it's a shame that they think that who do you think you are to supersede my academic, political, social, economic status? Because once again, they see us as inferior.
Right.
They don't see us in our spaces. I've spoken at the UN and all these things, and I'm pro-black. I'm very nuanced and specific, and some people didn't like that. They didn't like me coming in with, going to get a PhD and talking about black women and black activism and all these things, and they got angry. Who does she think she is invading my space?
Absolutely. That's why I'm telling you, if you haven't read White Rage yet, read it. And it's nothing new. It's not like anything that we don't know, but it's just the way that Ms. Anderson puts it together. I'm not sure because she's a professor. She's a professor at one of the schools in New York. So I don't know if she's Dr. Anderson because she doesn't go by it on the book. So she may be Dr. Anderson. I don't know, but I know it's Carol Anderson, and the book is White Rage. Some of the stuff that we're seeing now, and again, this is I don't think I'm wrong, but I'll couch it. I'll do the disclaimer as it being a personal belief. But personally, some of this backlash we're getting right now is exactly what she was talking about. We've dealt with an African-American president for 8 years. And that's the height of anger now. So the backlash that we're feeling now is from that anger. That African-American male made it to the highest seat in the land for not only one term, but two. Mm-hmm. So the anger was as high as it could possibly get because an African American got to the highest seat that he could possibly or she could possibly get into. So me personally, I believe a lot of the stuff that we're getting now, the backlash that we're getting, even the fact that Trump made it into office was a part of that backlash.
Yes, I agree. That's what CNN political commentator Van Jones was talking about. This is a white lash from 8 years of President Obama, being in office. And let's talk about it. Michelle Obama as the first African-American, first lady, and how she has 2 Ivy League degrees. And like how degreed, he said that Michelle Obama is the most educated first lady in the nation's history.
Correct.
In all of in American history. And so to see how not only the class and the poise and the elegance, but them having to have that in wake of racial slurs. Michelle Obama in a recent article talked about how the racial slurs that she endured during her as the first lady, that cut her the deepest, but she still had to remain poised. Now we have Trump, who goes on Twitter and says whatever he wants.
Absolutely.
His son is involved with, Russian lawyers before the campaign, and nothing has happened. But let that be President Obama. Let him raise his voice. Let him say a certain thing. Let Michelle Obama make a certain look. They're already like, they're too harsh. They're too angry. They're
right.
this. They look like apes. And meanwhile, we have this president now who, is going back and forth with Chrissy Teigen, John Legend's wife, on Twitter. And it's an embarrassment. It's embarrassing presidency.
It really is. It is. There's a side of me. I sit here and I watch all this going on, and there's a side of me that said if it wasn't real, it would be comical. Because I had said prior to Trump being elected, I honestly think he would be a very good comedian. Because he is quick-witted and he has a very quick comeback, and some of the things he says truly is funny. But the truth of the matter is he's not a comedian. He's the president of the United States. He's not even a businessman anymore per se that everyone thinks he's a businessman. No. Right now, you're the president of the United States, and the behaviors and the commentary coming out of his mouth is nowhere close to presidential. And yet, we're constantly getting kind of like a pass, if you will. And that's why I said the pass is coming as a part of that backlash, as a part of that rage. It's just ongoing. I was telling some friends of mine, I actually stopped watching the news because I watch CNN every night. I could sit there and get mesmerized by it, hearing the same stories from all over, from Jake Tapper all the way up to Don Lemon, all the same thing, and just sit there. You almost get like hypnotized. You just sit there hearing the same thing over and over again because each one of them do the same story. But I stopped. When we got to the James Comey testimony, I stopped watching. I hadn't watched. Yesterday was the first time I turned on CNN since the James Comey, and I didn't watch the Comey trial because at that point, that's how I said I've had enough. And each day, but I would catch tidbits, and each day it would be more drama. Every week, the commentators are coming on saying this is the president's worst week. It's like, well, how can every week be his worst week? But it is. Every week is some more drama. And then they said, well, he likes it that way. I said, but nothing is getting done for the country.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I'm a journalist, and I stopped watching reading and watching the news for a long time. I actually went to Cuba for 15 days, and that was the best thing for me without any internet access. It is too much. It's interesting to see how the media is really good. We're doing a really great job probing and getting into Trump's administration and, the conspiracies and the scams and the lying and all those things. But let's just keep it real. the media also created Trump.
Yes.
This man didn't have any presidential campaigns or ads, that many ads, because the media was so fascinated by this crazy political machine that is President Trump. I don't even acknowledge him as my president.
Yeah,
but
most people don't. Not especially
Trump.
People of color for the most part. They really don't. No, they really. I mean, I got people calling him 45. I got people calling him everything but president. But you're absolutely right. Because see, this is the thing, and I said this to Anne Marie last week. The very thing. This is the psychology of a Trump, and I'm playing mini junior psychologist here. But the very thing that he keeps touting that he doesn't want, in reality, he really does want. The reason he keeps saying fake news is because he wants them to keep reporting. And so I said, what the media really ought to do is every last entity out there, I mean, even down to like the station that I'm on, every last one of us ought to go for a time where we don't report not one thing he does. Just go into a media blackout. That would send him into fits. You want to see a Twitter fit? Let them not come, because he keeps talking about the media. But the truth of the matter is, just as you said, the media is what made him. And he knows that.
He does. And it's a double-edged sword, right? We need journalists. I respect Ida B. Wells and what she did in terms of investigative reporting, in terms of lynching. Like, we need, journalists as warriors going out there and reporting this information because of whatever's going on in Trump's cabinet. But however, they did create this monster because they gave him the airtime. And it's important that we do not forget the people who are on the ground doing the work just because they haven't been on the media or reported on. There are several people doing groundwork, activists, teachers, political scientists, your everyday business owners, your everyday citizens really doing work to counter not only Trump, but they've been countering other historical, negativity that has happened, and they've always been there. So that's what I tell people, just because it's not being reported doesn't mean it's not happening.
Correct.
The revolution will not be televised, and right now the revolution is not being televised because people are focusing on Trump. However, to still maintain and still keep pushing and doing media sensationalism. Media sensationalism does not always equate to extended political practice or power.
Correct.
Like, we have to really focus on what we're doing now, because this is so critical for our generation to come, our children's children. And so we have to put the groundwork in, or we're going to be caught up in this Trump media frenzy. So I refuse to read the news all the time, because if this is a black person, if this is Obama, if this is anyone else, he would be impeached already.
Oh, absolutely. And see, that's the last time, like I said, was the first time I watched in months. And like you, I traveled abroad. I was in China for like 11 days. And I asked my tour guide, I said, look, I hate it when people ask me to speak on behalf of all of black people. I said, because I can't speak on all of behalf of black. And so I'm not expecting you to speak on behalf of all Chinese people. I said, but what was the reaction whenever President Trump took over, when Donald Trump won? So she kind of looked at me quizzically and kind of said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what was their reaction whenever Donald Trump became president of the United States? She said, well, to be honest with you, the average Chinese person, they didn't care. They could care less. Maybe the politicians, maybe the upper, those that are in those positions, maybe they care, but the average Chinese person did not care. And when I was over there, like you, I didn't have access to the internet per se, and I chose not to watch TV or go on the internet. I didn't hear his name once. The entire time I was on the trip, I didn't hear Donald Trump's name once. And then for me, that was a good thing. I didn't know for those few days what was going on here in the States while I was there. But the title of your chapter is Racism and Rhetoric: Trump, Eugenics, and the Black Inferior Complex. Now, I want to get into that. I want to whet the appetite of the audience, because I don't want you to tell the whole thing, but I do want you to give them enough to say, I want to go out and get News Chaser, because I want to read the rest of that. That's what we're going to do. But before we even get into that, because this interview this morning is extremely timely, given his comments yesterday with the police. He was up here in, I believe, Long Island, one of the islands. I'm trying to see here. The National Civil Rights President Trump for comments he made. It was Long Island. Okay. The commentary he made was, And I looked at it. I watched it last night. I told my brother-in-law, I said, that comment doesn't even make sense. And now I'm seeing it in print. It really doesn't make sense. When you see these towns and when you see these thugs being thrown into the back of a paddy wagon, okay, so those two things don't make sense to me. When you see these towns and when you see these thugs, it doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, being thrown into the back of a paddy wagon, you just see them thrown in rough. And I said, please don't be too nice. Trump told the audience of law enforcement officers at Suffolk County Community College in Brentwood, New York. Like, when you guys put somebody in the car and you're protecting their head, you know, the way you put their hand over, like, don't hit their head, and they've just killed somebody, don't hit their head. I said, you can take the hand away, okay? That was part of the, you want to talk rhetoric? That was a part of his rhetoric on yesterday up in Long Island. Now, there's a few things. First off, when an officer apprehends a suspect, they don't know if the suspect is guilty or not. That's one, because everyone is innocent until proven guilty. So just because they have now apprehended somebody does not necessarily mean they have the right person. So for him to be saying, rough them up, don't be nice, this, that, and the other, already we have enough quote-unquote police brutality as it is. And now, for the most part, what they just heard, if you read between the lines, was, yeah, boys, keep doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And when you, because, again, this goes back to the conscious-subconscious thing.
Yes.
For the most part in the country, when folks, in their mind, if you say thug or perpetrator, or whatever adjective you want to use, the thing that pops in most people's mind is a person of color.
Yes.
So when you get a statement like, when you see these thugs being thrown into the back of a paddy wagon, you can just rest assured that what popped in folks' mind was not a Caucasian male.
No. This is, dog whistle politics and coded language at its finest. I mean, Trump is a thug. His son is a thug.
Absolutely.
Thrown in the back of the police car without any sort of kindness thrown at him, because this is once again, like you said before, this is what the chapter is talking about, the psychological thinking of how black people are rendered in this country, or viewed, the media imagery. When you notice when, rest his soul, when Mike Brown passed away, they didn't put up this, high school photo. They put up, images of him being, I guess, thugged out, with Trayvon Martin. They had the hoodie over his head and, saying that he was smoking weed, when in fact, white people smoke weed. White people do all sorts of drugs as well. White people commit crimes. White people, if you think about it, at the end of the day, white people have, committed heinous atrocities against black people and people of color, and amongst themselves. So to render us as thugs is a narrative that's being played out, that's saying that black people are lascivious, we're sneaky, we're violent, when in fact, these are, attributes of anybody, not just black people or non-black people of color.
That was my point with the whole Denzel Haley thing. That was exactly my point, because it perpetuates that stereotype and those images. And I'm looking here where you says, you quoted, I have a certain gene. I'm a gene believer, unquote. These words are spoken by none other than President Donald J. Trump, known for abrasive and abusive rhetoric, which spans the racist, homophobic, sexist, and misogynistic gamut. Trump's hate speech was a customary fixture in his campaign. Now, also this week, one of the things that was listed on this week was this whole thing with the military and transgender, of which the generals and all the folks had no idea where he came out of left field on them on that. But even that, again, is a part of this whole thing that you're talking about in your chapter here.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about, eugenics, because I see you go into a whole race eugenics and the intelligentsia. Talk a little bit about the history of eugenics.
So in the chapter, I discussed how we get the term survival of the fittest from Charles Darwin. And Charles Darwin, what many historians have said, he wasn't using eugenics as a negative, racial, division to say these people with these sort of phenotype are smarter and these people with this sort of phenotype are, stupid or whatnot. but it began to be that way after a while, and it was used, it's called negative eugenics, but used as a tool for white supremacy, and where Sir Francis Galton in 1883 coined the term eugenics. It was called the study of race improvement, and he said that it would be basically a seditious act against genetic purity, maintaining genetic white purity, if white people breeded or had relations with black people, because they are, they're impish, they're inferior, and they're all these other things. And then fast forward, we have the American Eugenics Society, which promoted this, negative eugenics, and also began to do forced sterilization or promote forced sterilization in many states, in North Carolina and California being two of the most prominent, where North Carolina had to give, money to people that they, forcibly sterilized. And women, black men, mentally disabled, and all these other people who they rendered inferior, they were sterilized. So this is where the brief history of that. And from there, I talk about how Trump really believes that, he has a gene, this racehorse theory that, if you breed two racehorses, there comes out another faster, better, smarter racehorse. And he believes that. He believes that he has a gene inside of him that came from his father, and it's in his children, that they're somehow better or superior because he's a businessman, he's the president, he's all these things. And he's always felt like this before he was the president. So fast forward into now at those statements about, thugs and police, he believes that black people are somehow deviant and somehow inferior, somehow negative, and they're thuggish. So that's why he says the things that he says about certain communities. Mexicans talking about bad hombres. Who goes up on, talking about that during a presidential debate? The things that he says about these transgender community. He thinks that these people, marginalized people, black people, trans people, women are somehow inferior, and he really connects this to, or I connect it to, his belief in negative eugenics.
And yet, we had enough people who were willing to elect that. I tell people all the time, if you really, because see, this is where that deep thinker thing comes back in. I really do pick things apart. As I'm saying, people think I'm quiet, or sometimes they think I'm mouthy, or they think I'm whatever. But my brain really does sit and kind of pick things apart. And I looked at this whole race and said he beat 17 other candidates, with the exception of Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson and maybe one or two more. All the rest of them had political experience. He did not. He beat out, plus the 5 candidates on the Democratic side. And so he beat 21, 22 people out. Folks went for this line. They went for this nonsense. But that begins to make one question, well, if we're willing to elect that, and when I say we, I'm not talking about me, and I know it wasn't you, but if as a country, if we're willing to elect that, knowing what we know, knowing what we knew at that time, because the person who did the forward to your book, that did News Chaser, Michael D'Antonio, he has a book, it's called The Truth About Trump. That was one of the best books I've ever read about Donald Trump. And in terms of it being truthful, I don't even know. I mean, and Trump verified it because he did some of the interviews with him, and he supplied the information to him. But the one credit that I do give the man, now I'm speaking of Donald Trump now, and I said it, and I'll continue to say it as we go through the book, I don't fault him per se because he did not change his spots. The Donald Trump that you're seeing right now was the same Donald Trump in his teens, in his 20s, his 30s, his 40s, and on up the line. He hasn't changed a thing. And that thinking that you're talking about, he had as a child. He had as a teenager. If you read D'Antonio's book, if you read The Truth About Trump, the very thing that you're talking about, it comes through loud and clear in his book. And I'm paraphrasing, there's a piece of it where D'Antonio talks about Trump made the commentary that some of his accountants were black. And they were good. The fact that he hired them, they were good. All right. But he still made the commentary, I hate black people, managing my money. I hate the fact that black people are have anything to do with my money. And he says that in the book. And again, I'm paraphrasing. I'm not reading verbatim. If I go get the book, if I pull it up, it's there. But there are other things like the commentary about women, the commentary. And yet, as a country, we still said that's what we want as president.
Yes, that's what they wanted. I mean, I referenced Michael D'Antonio in my chapter 2, and that's what they wanted because they wanted to make America great again. And when you hear about that, think about that. They wanted to make America white again.
Absolutely.
They want to make America, it reminds me of the women's suffragette movement where they aligned with white supremacists because they were afraid of them pending, color wash that was coming through, and black women and black people advocating for their voting rights and all these things and women's rights, and they aligned themselves with this white supremacist movement so that they could, maintain this white purity. And it's the same thing. Trump, he comes from that cloth where he literally believes that he's better and that better than, black people, better than other non-black people of color, better than women. And even though, that's how he was raised, people can change. I believe that even though he was embedded with these things, he knows exactly what he's doing. And he's very calculated, and he may be an idiot to me and a lot of other people, but he's very calculated in what he does in the sense of what he says. Anyone that can go on Twitter and talk about banning the transgender community without, really giving it thought as the president, he really thinks negatively about people that don't look like him. And also we have to think about how he duped many white people who voted for him because he thinks negatively about poor white people too.
Yes.
To use them to get
their
votes. So it's
bingo.
People in his bracket, his socioeconomic bracket, that he really looks at as aligning himself with them. Not necessarily all white people, but rich white people he aligns himself.
That's correct. And they said that last night. They said if you look at the folks that he's picking in terms of they said there's two, and this is again going back last night, what I was listening to on the news, they said there are two groups that he really kind of connects with. The military, that's why you keep seeing these generals, and as you just said, the rich, the billionaires. That's the two. And generally, that's Caucasian men, older men, because if you look at that cabinet, that's exactly what it is. I mean, but they said those two areas is who he kind of is the generals of the military and the billionaires. That's because they even went through. That's why you have a Rex Tillerson. That's why you have now Kelly, and that's why you have McMaster. That's why you have all these folks that he's putting in there. He really didn't have nothing to do for the one that just left, Ranks Priebus, because he thought he was a wimp. That's why that whole thing went down there. He didn't think wimp was Rents was strong enough, and it's going on down the line. As a matter of fact, anyone who stands, this is because this comment came out last night too, and I think I yelled back at the television. They said, well, finally, Congress and the Senate, they're telling the president no. I said they told the president no for 8 years. They told President Obama no for 8 years, and they had no problem doing it. So I don't know why they should have an issue telling this one no.
I don't understand that either, and I don't understand why they voted yes to get him in. They wanted to give, John McCain all this credit for saying no, but then there were Republican women, and I'm not giving them any, I don't know if they voted for President or Trump or not, but they've been telling, no for this, GOP Obamacare repeal for a long time. And we've been telling him this no for so long. I guess that's one of the reasons why I got kind of a little bit upset with all the political protests that were happening with Donald Trump when he got into office. Many people coming out. We've been telling you all about this for a very, very long time, the type of behaviors that many of these white politicians and presidential administrations have against certain communities. And now it's like everyone's seeing it full throttle. No, we've been telling you no to this for a very, very long time. People died. Activists have died and been assassinated and killed because of saying no to the powers that be. And this man is over here saying whatever he wants to say without any he gets backlash, but it seems like without political consequence.
Correct.
And when our people are going to really rise up and say, really, no, and move forward into, to an impeachment? Because what a lot of the things that he is doing, the Muslim ban, this transgender ban from the military, all these things that he's been doing are very unconstitutional, but
right.
It shows how the Constitution, there's a great book by Charles Mills called The Racial Contract. It shows how the social contract, when you think about Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Thomas Hobbes, how they say that, there's liberty and all these things for human beings, but those liberties are only for white men. They
correct.
were never meant for us.
The
Declaration
that's
of
correct.
Independence, never for us.
Correct. Because when that was written, and I tell people this all the time, when that was written, we were considered 3/5 of a man.
Mm-hmm.
We were African Americans or black people or Negroes or whatever they were called at the time were not even considered a full human being. They were considered 3/5, or they were considered chattel, or they were considered an animal. If you go, I'm on Ancestry.com, and every now and again I get into this mood and I'll sit there for hours. But if you go back and you look at the census, you'll see black people, the family members were listed as chattel. They weren't even listed as part of as part of the employee. They weren't even listed as an employee. They were listed as a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when those documents were written, you're right. That was not an inclusion, even though it says for all or everything with those words. That all was not including all.
No, of course. And you said something so important. A thing. We were viewed as a thing, an animal, an object. Something to be used and abused under this, colonial project. And this is the same thing. That's why he can say thugs. That's what the coded language is there. Thugs and all these other, dog whistle politics. They say those things because they don't see us as humans. That's why they can leave a young black man's body on the ground for 4 hours without covering him up. That's why they can pin down a black woman who's 5 months pregnant, and throw her down on the ground, the police, without any care that she's a black woman and is carrying, a child into this world. These are why people, can shoot a young man walking down the street with Skittles and an Arizona iced tea without impunity and get away with it because they don't think of us as human beings. We're things. And that's a problem. And they're scared. So that usually when you hear, I was scared for my life, because we're viewed as violence and as objects.
Correct.
So it's very important to really tease that down, the psychological implications of being black in general in the world, but also being black in America and right now in Trump's America. What does that mean?
Now,
what does it mean to be Muslim and all these trans and all these other things right now?
Now, my question to you, and because it's the 8 o'clock hour and I need to do some things because it's the top of the hour, but when I come back from doing that, the question I have for you, and even before I say that, let me digress. Let me go back to something you said a couple minutes ago about Trump and who he sees as. If you look in the book, if you read in the book, he didn't even see his own brother. He thought his brother was a loser. His brother was a pilot. And he thought his brother was a loser because he didn't go into real estate, didn't go into business. He thought he says in the pilot, that was just kind of like a glorified bus driver. That's what he says about his own brother. And I love aviation. I know how to fly myself. And I know everything that goes into terms of everything that you need to know in terms of making that aircraft move, all the dials and everything. Don't get me wrong. I know they move people, but there is some knowledge and skill and everything that you need to know to be able to do that. And yet he called his brother a loser because he was a pilot, and he was a pilot for a major airline. And ultimately his brother did wind up, becoming an alcoholic and so forth and so on, a whole sordid history. But he looked down on his own brother.
Yes. That is very interesting. It says a lot about his character and what he believes, who he believes is important.
Right. So now, whenever I come back from doing the weather and all that good stuff again, what I want to get to you, the question I want you to think about while I'm doing is, there is a devil's advocate side, and then there's also the side of how do we get the message to young African Americans in terms of doing their part. because there is the devil's advocacy of, had Mike Brown or whatever not been trying to rob that store, he wouldn't have gotten in that situation. Had this one not been doing that, had the Johnny not been in the stolen car, he wouldn't have to interface with the police. Had, Raheem not been doing this, they wouldn't have to worry about whether the police officer puts his hand on his head trying to get him in the squad car or not, or the paddy wagon. How do we get... Had this one not been walking down the street with their pants hanging down, how do we get them to go back against the stereotypes, not necessarily just for that, but to have some pride in themselves? And trust me, I get the whole psychological thing. I get but there's some things I think as the community that we're going to have to do as well. So I want you to ponder that while I share the weather and everything else.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
WPSC, Wayne, New Jersey. On the radio, 88.7 FM. Online, GoBrave.org. A tune-in radio station. Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network.
Broadcasting live from Hobart Hall in Wayne, New Jersey. This is the innovative.
I think they're really unique.
The fearless. They have awesome variety. The kick-ass. I love Brave New Radio. The sensational.
I've never heard anything like it.
This is the one and only Brave New Radio.
Here's your North Jersey weather report.
All right, we're at 66.2 degrees, working our way up to a high of 75. Rain showers this morning with overcast skies during the afternoon. Partly cloudy this evening. Sunday, mainly sunny, high of 81, low of 60. Clear skies Sunday night. Sunny skies on Monday, 86 as a high, 65 as a low. Clear skies Monday night as well. And Tuesday, sunshine and some clouds, 87 as a high, 65 as a low. Still clear. Wednesday, though, partly cloudy in the morning, followed by scattered thunderstorms in the afternoon, high of 88, low of 67.
WP
88.7 FM.
Brave New Radio.
Yes, that is the weather brought to you by WP 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio. One of the reasons we call ourselves Brave New Radio is because of discussions that we're having this morning. It takes a little bit of courage to come out and have the discussion that we're having, because some people will undoubtedly get offended, and and as you heard Jaimee just say, I mean, for that matter, African Americans have been offended for years. We've been killed and lynched and this, that, and the other. But some folks with a conversation like this will become offended. And it's not necessarily meant to offend. It really is kind of like to make you think. One of the things I love to think, and I love to help other people critically think. And so when you hear some of the things that we're talking about, or if you read something in a book like News Chaser, if nothing else, don't just dismiss it. Give some thought to it to say, well, wait a minute, there are some points there that are worth thinking about. And then beyond thinking, how do you begin to change behavior? And that leads me to what I was saying right before I just did the top of the hour. In terms of, Jaimee, somebody will look at me and you or Denise or Anne Marie or any of these folks that I chat with and hang with and say, well, you're the bougie blacks. You got your education. You went and got degrees. You speak white. You talk white. I mean, how do you get folks to understand? No, it's bigger than that. How do you get folks to understand? No, you don't need to be running around here with your pants down. You do need to speak articulately. You do need to carry yourself in a certain way, because there's such a stereotype that's constantly perpetuated that is soon. And I tell my kids all the time, I'm the principal of the school. I said, but I tell you what, whenever I leave this building, I'm not in suit and tie. I'll put on a hoodie and a pair of jeans just like you do. And when I walk down that street, they don't know me as a principal. They know me, that's another black man. That's another nigga. And I don't use that term lightly, but that's the view. How do you get that message across that we're trying to get across to the generation coming behind us, or in some respects with us, or even ahead of us? How do you get people of color to all stand up and say, yo, we got to do better?
I think there is very much a class issue that we have in the black community, especially among black working professionals and those who are in the academy. And I come across some people in my space who they literally think that they are better than other people because they've attained, these 3 letters, or are trying to attain this PhD, and they look down upon, certain people and how they look and how they speak. And I have a, grave issue on both sides of the spectrum with that, because I come from a working class background.
That's right.
My family, my dad comes from a legacy of cleaners who migrated from wherever they came from and took their skills that they learned and came together and had a cleaning business. My mother, when she was working, worked for the Montgomery Township and was really working with the commissioners on the government level. However, I see both sides of the spectrum. And me getting my PhD, I see where sometimes we're a little bit too judgmental of those who do not necessarily, are to talk like us or may have degrees like us. And this has caused a schism in terms of class-based schism between one another. Because I know for myself, I can articulate with you and talk with you right now, but I love listening to hip hop. I went to see Kendrick Lamar and I went crazy, and I love Future, and I listen to I watch reality television, and it's like this duality that we're able to have. I can be both. I can be this, and I can be that. I don't have to be one thing in order to appease or what I call respectability politics.
But see, right there, let me put a pin in that right there, because that's where, for me, I need all of us to go, that we can go both ways. I can't have us where we can only go one way. And the kids I deal with every day, I said, look, if you want to speak, quote unquote, if you want to say, however you want to call it, Ebonics, in its setting, that's fine. But when you go on that job interview, you need to be able to speak properly. Oh, Mr. Medley, don't worry, you won't be able to. Like, no, you won't, because you're not training yourself to. See, I'm like, when I get on the block, I can break it down with the brothers. Yo, man, what it be like? I mean, they would think I'm talking a whole different language, but I know how to do both. And that's where I'm going. I mean, if I choose, which you will never see me with my pants hanging out, because that's just uncomfortable. It's just uncomfortable. But if I were to choose to do that, I would still have sense enough to know to put that suit on when I go to the interview. And this is the issue I have. You have folks that don't have the sense enough to know that you have to do that. So like you just said, we have to be able to go both ways.
Yeah, I think this is a very contentious topic, because I've had these conversations before with people, and I do agree that, in the sense, our young people should be around, certain people that look like us in terms of mentorship and whatnot. However, I don't believe me wearing a suit will save me from getting shot or getting gunned down. Like me speaking articulate,
absolutely,
having 3 PhD, a PhD and 3 tertiary degrees won't save me from racism and whatnot. So it's like, what are we telling our young people when we are saying to them, you have to look this way and that way, when in fact Malcolm and Martin wore suits and look what happened to them.
Correct.
And we have to really be careful of how we don't demoralize our young people to try to fit into a certain standard of respectability, when in fact, on the other hand, white folks don't have any respectability towards us, and we're still
absolutely
this aesthetic that will be pleasing to them. Like Hampton, for example, was telling young men that they can't have their locks and they need to cut their hair. What is that saying to us, that cutting their hair will look more appeasing to the white gaze? For me, I don't do things on the basis of white people. I do things on the basis for black liberation, black people, black women, all sorts of communities who are comprised within the black community, and some who are not.
Well, see, this is where I go on that, because doing something in its proper way does not have a color. Doing something in its correct manner does not have a race, and that's why I have the issue with when someone tells me you talk white. My issue with that is, first off, all white folks don't talk well. Secondly, you're giving them too much credit. Whenever you're saying now you talk white, what you're saying is, however you talk as a black person, that's not acceptable. So, matter of fact, I asked them, what are you saying? Are you saying that as an African American or as a black person, we ought to be talking ass backwards or tail backwards or behind backwards or however you want to say? Is that what you're saying whenever you say you talk white, that they're doing it correctly? So in my view, there is no... When you're doing something in its proper or correct manner, there is no race or color associated with that. And that's the issue that I have. Like, it's not a matter of me doing anything for white people or trying to impress white. I want to do things in its correct and proper way.
Mm-hmm. And then that's an interesting point, because we have to talk about the variable proper. What does that mean in a socially constructed world by white people in terms of how they have created and crafted what proper means?
Correct.
And that's where I have, an issue with this, because it's like we have to see this from a whole view of how are we integrating ourselves into this socially constructed world of what respectable is, what proper is, how we should look, how should we speak, and we have to have a very clear conversation with our young people about what that means, and not too much take away from who they are, and then still tell them, okay, this is how the world works, this is how the world functions, unfortunately, and you're living in this world that is socially constructed to appeal to this white gaze. Right. And I'm not saying that speaking white, there's no such thing as speaking white.
Correct.
However, let's talk about the subconscious, right? And the conscious. We're taught that we're inferior for so long that, speaking a certain way is therefore acting white, which means you're acting bougie, which means you think you're better. And then speaking in a certain way with Ebonics means that you're inferior, and this is how we speak and whatnot. But in fact, this is how many, the slaves communicated to get, their point across. So the masters wouldn't know what they're saying. There's a rich history in Ebonics. So we have to really look at both sides of the spectrum, and how we should move forward with this and not demoralize our youth, but also encourage them to know that, unfortunately, this is what you have to do. In some cases, what you have to do. But you should also be yourself.
I agree.
I go into spaces. I never lose who I am. I love Outkast. I love, I like to have fun. I like to, hey girl, what's up? I don't change myself for people, because they're not changing themselves for me.
Correct. And we're fundamentally, to a certain degree, saying the same thing. The only thing I'm advocating for is to get folks to be able to do that. In other words, I'm the principal of a building. On some days I come in there in a suit, other days I come in there in a polo, some days I go in there in a dashiki. And I did one day I went in there with, I'm trying to think of the name, it was a Spanish shirt. It was the Spanish shirt, I'm trying to think of the name of it, because they wear it at a lot of weddings and stuff. I looked up the history on it, and I had that. I'm comfortable, and I tell folks all the time, first of all, I am a proud African-American male, wouldn't want to be anything else. And I also tell people I love me some me. And I don't mean that in a cocky or an arrogant way, but if you don't love yourself first, you can't love anybody else. All right? So, I mean, in terms of, and if you don't love yourself, you can't expect anyone else to love you. So even in that, if you looked at it from a racial thing, which again is kind of like a trick, if you will, when you've got a race of people from a psychological perspective that thinks they're inferior or begins to hate themselves, then it gets into, well, why should I love you then if you don't love yourself? Why should I care about you if you don't care about yourself? And it's like a vicious cycle. And so my point is, let's get folks to be comfortable with who they are and get them to the point wherein they can go both ways, because the truth of the matter is we live in a society where it's not just us. And the truth of the matter is, sadly, again, we don't own anything. So it's not even like we could just break off and say, well, it's just going to be us. Because we still got to go, for whatever we need, we still somewhere along the chain have to go and deal with other folks. So my only thing, and like I said, fundamentally, I think we're saying the same thing, but we need our young people to be able to switch hit. They need to be able to operate in both worlds.
Yes, I mean, I work with young people, and I'm in a fellowship with young people in this capacity, and I see how amazingly talented these young people are. They're artistic and musically inclined, and they have so much to say about the world and this space and the place that we're in. And I, for one, remember when I grew up, I was, told I spoke white, and I did this and that. And I have come to realize that Black people, we are a myriad, a multitude of different people. That we're not homogenous. We bring so much breath and talent and purpose to this world, and without us, America and the diaspora would not
absolutely
be. And so I believe that not all of us are supposed to be teachers or aspiring PhDs. Some of us are opening mom and pop business, a successful business. There's a brother that has a restaurant at the end of Georgia Avenue, and I'm talking about, he may dress up, but he came in very casual. He came in with, his joggers and in a sweatsuit. And my thing is, if you cannot respect me in my Howard hat and my jeans, and I have to change to get respect from you, then that speaks to one's character.
That's correct.
I've walked in with jeans on. I went to interview someone. It was very casual. However, they walked right past me, and they didn't even say anything to me. And they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I should have never done that." No, the little black girl with the braids and the jeans, you don't think she's...
Right.
But this is me. And so if I have to not be who I am for you to give me respect, then that shows what people think. And especially in a lot of white spaces, I have been asked to speak on panels, and they don't believe it. They don't know it's me. And when I come in, it's like, it is Jaimee. But to me, I didn't look the part with my braids and how all these things. So I command respect just on the basis that I am a human being, and I
correct. And that's what I'm saying. Folks got to get to that point, and it is incumbent upon us as the mentors and the tutors and the role models. It is incumbent upon us to get them there. And in that example you just gave, whoever that person was, they probably would have walked past you in the suit. Because again, this is some of the right. Some of this, it is. Oh my God, we can talk for hours on this. I know we only got about 15, 20 minutes or so left, and this is a passionate subject for me. We could talk for hours on this because some of the things that I've experienced over my 54, almost 55 years on the planet, in terms of the not. That has been to the point where I was like beat or accosted or anything for being black. But some of the things that's been said or done, or either like you just said, walk by, or we thought you were the custodian. I mean, I had somebody come to my building. One of the days I did not have on my suit. I had on my polo, and the person came in and thought I was the custodian. And I said, no, I'm the principal. And I mean, I've had that happen on more than one occasion, always for that matter. But it's this... You have to be able, like you just said, you command respect, and you're able to command respect of how you carry yourself. And my point is getting folks to be able to do just that. I don't care what they have on. Mm-hmm. They got to be able to get to that point where they carry themselves in a way that commands respect. And the sad truth is, and this is psychologically based, too many of us don't.
And that's true. Frantz Fanon's book, Black Skin, White Mask, he talks about how many black people and black folk in the diaspora have something called an affective arrhythmiasm, and it's like this psychological inferiority complex that we're all living in, where we think that we are not as smart and as capable. And I mentioned something about imposter syndrome, and there's a women's organization of black aspiring PhDs or who already have their PhDs called Sister PhD. I think that's what it's called. And they wrote an article about imposter syndrome and how many of us feel like we're imposters trying to get our PhDs, or not just in our PhDs, but imposters in life, like we don't deserve to be here. And every day I have to speak daily affirmations and talk to God, and I'm a Christian too, and talk to Jesus. Like, I deserve to be here.
Absolutely.
I have every right, and I think our young people need to realize that whatever space, whatever background that they come from, I don't care if you poor or wealthy or middle, I hate the term, middle class, quote unquote, you deserve to be in any space that you set your foot in or your feet in. And that's what I've had to learn. Like, I've interned at the White House. I've been at the, worked out of the UNAIDS office. I've done certain things. And usually when you're the only one, you start to question, like, do I belong here? No, I belong here.
Yes, you belong there.
My ancestors paid
That's
the way
absolutely right. And see, that's what I was getting at a couple of minutes ago. There's nobody ever going to make me feel inferior or ashamed of my blackness. They're just not. That's what I was telling you. When I was in school, and if I decide to go back for the front center, right there in front of the professor, you're going to deal with me. You're going to deal with this intelligent black man, whether you want to or not. You will go, and see, that's what I'm saying. How do I get more? And it's not a matter of being cocky. It's not a matter of being arrogant. It's a matter of being confident in who you are. And like you just said, I deserve this just like you feel you deserve it. And nobody's going to make me feel like, because how many are in your PhD cohort?
Well, from what I know, it's probably about a good 10 to 15 of us.
Okay, so, and predominantly women, or you have some brothers in there too?
It's both, yes.
Okay,
both.
so I guarantee you are scaring the heck out of some people. You're angering and you're scaring folks. When that cohort comes out there, you all come across that graduation stage in your robes and the things that's attached and the hoods and this, that, and the other. That's scaring the heck out of some people.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I got my master's degree from Howard, and in 2015 we had the most, I'm not sure if it's changed, but that was the year where there were the most black PhDs in the history of Howard. And I saw those, brothers and sisters walk across the stage with pride. And it's like, just to think that, 100, 200 years ago, we weren't even allowed access.
Correct.
And I think this is why it is so important that whatever our young people aspire to be, whether it's a business owner or they want to pursue a sport or whatever, we have to encourage them to know that our history, we need to have them know where we've come from.
That's correct.
And many of them do recognize that. Some of them don't, some of them do. Some of adults don't recognize where we come from. However, it's imperative that we know that they are, glory humanified. We come from a glorious land.
Correct.
And that's why when I talk to people, I try not to say slaves. They were enslaved Africans. We had a history before we were slaves. And so we need to understand, and it's not just from Egypt now. There's other parts of the, African continent that we have to explore now. So, but really encouraging them to know, listen, this is our history, and now it's time in 2017 that where you can make history.
And see, there you go. And see, my thing is always this, and I thank God, and I'm grateful to God, I'm grateful to my parents, I'm grateful for all the people my thing is always to be the best. Not the best because I'm trying to outdo a white person, not necessarily the best because I'm even trying to outdo another black person. My thing for me is I'm always going to be striving to be the best. And the only thing right now that I haven't received, and it'll be coming shortly at some point, is principality. But there's not one organization that I have not been in that I haven't been awarded or seen by that body as the best of. When I was in the military, Soldier of the Year. When I was a teacher, Teacher of the Year. Radio show, best talk show of the year. And I can go, and I got the plaques and the trophies to verify. I'm not making this stuff up, but my point is, I could care less about the plaque or the trophy. I have always strive for being the best. So the message that I'm constantly trying to get to folks is, this is where I go back to Martin Luther King. You were just talking about business on a word. I don't care if you're a street sweeper. Be the best at it. Be the best street sweeper. Be the best store owner. Be the best ball player. Be the best PhD candidate. Be the best politician. Whatever it is that you're going to be the best at it.
Yes. I agree. And I see my dad, he does manual labor, and he's the best at it.
There you go.
An amazing worker. And now we're in an age where we honor, or we don't revere industry as much anymore. We don't revere manual labor as much anymore. It's more so corporate America. And you have to look back at how our parents and our parents' parents and the generation, before that, they were excellent.
They were. Yes, they had less and did more. And we have more and do less.
Yes, and we need to really hold on to that. And I remember reading a book called Carry Me Home by Diane McWhorter, and it talks about Martin Luther King and Fred Shuttlesworth. And Fred Shuttlesworth was an amazing man. And along with
that's
King,
correct.
He reminds me of this code switching, how we can be in the suit, but he was a custom preacher now, and he didn't back down. And so this is what I respect about the duality of black people, having to be suppressed. Our culture was co-opted and taken away from us, but we still maintained this, and we maintained excellence, and we created, a culture within a culture, and within a culture that didn't want us.
Correct.
And I think that we still need to apply that today, especially with combating, going back again with Trump. We need to combat the psychological inferiority and recognize we created a culture. We'll create another culture that, you know, you will recognize my humanity whether you like it or not.
Correct.
By any means necessary. And I think we're at that pivotal point now where we have the opportunity, and we've been doing it, but we cannot let the media or anything else deter us from getting this message across. We have to really, like, in our communities, day by day, you talk about being a principal with your young people, and you're planting the seed inside of them by being a principal, but planting the seed inside of them, telling them that they can do it. So I'm every day encouraging, and whoever's listening, just no matter what, keep doing your thing, because your purpose and your presence is much needed, especially now.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that back full circle, because that's why it's more important than ever for us to step up and be proud of who we are, not ashamed of who we are, because you do have someone sitting in the White House that's doing exactly what you described, exactly what you're describing here in your contribution to the book in terms of the racism and the rhetoric. Oh, it's there, and it came out. I mean, it comes out daily, but it was so apropos that the commentary was made yesterday, and I was like, "Ooh, that's going to be incorporated into the interview tomorrow morning." But the very fact that you can stand there knowing that we're in a country that's constantly battling with police brutality, and you can stand there as the president and tell folks, don't be too nice. So now the next time an officer is hit with police brutality, that officer can say, but the president told me don't be nice.
Yes, and he's perpetuating even, and he really doesn't even know, in a sense, what he is creating at this point. He is creating so much contention between all these marginalized communities, Black people, Muslims, Hispanic, Latinx communities, the trans community, and people are not having it anymore. There comes to a point where you're learning in class about, I don't call them riots, we call them rebellions.
Right.
When you try to pacify people for so long and you not give them their rights, and they're coming out peacefully advocating for it, and it just, it stirs up.
Right.
And right now I see a lot of things brewing because he is saying such abusive rhetoric that now it's as if he's giving permission to already the structures that be to even do even more damage.
Right.
And he needs to be checked on it quickly and swiftly, because what's going to happen is people are not going to take this too much anymore.
No, you're right. And the thing is exactly what you said. It's so, and that, because he is really stirring up so many different groups. It's not even just one group. You got women, you got the LGBT community, you got the African Americans, you got the Hispanic, you got so many groups that if they do rise up together, it is going to be a revolution like never seen before.
Yes, and it's everything is coming full circle. Reading Black Power by Kwame Ture and Charles Hamilton, it's amazing how our predecessors have said the same thing and laid the groundwork and warned us at these times. Now more than ever, we look at what our predecessors have laid the foundation for, but also make sure we implement where they've had loopholes to make the foundation even more firm for the next generation to come.
Correct.
Because this is going, it took us this long to get here. We've done an amazing job, but we have a lot of work to do.
Yes, indeed.
There's so much work to do, but we can do it, and we're already doing it. We are seeds. They can't, like Bebe's kids. We don't die. We don't.
That's right. You say, yes, we can, and yes, we will. Yes, indeed. We're down to the last couple of minutes, and what I do with the microphone at that point is I turn it off and give the author or the guest an opportunity to promote. And you can promote anything you'd like with the exception of any dollar amounts. But if you're doing book signings, if you're doing appearances, how folks get in touch with you, you want to shout anybody out, any persons out, you want to shout Denise out or anybody in the family out, you have the opportunity to do all of that, because I'm going to shut the mic off and allow you to do that, and then we're going to close out.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Mark, for having me. I'm so appreciative. It was great talking with you. Thank you so much, Io, Denise, for everything with this. I want to thank my, God and my family, but also just keep up with me on Twitter. I'm at Jaimee Swift, JaimeeSwift. I'll be speaking in September at a Congressional Black Caucus panel on social activism and digital media. So in September, so please keep out on the look for that. And you can also follow my website. It's JaimeeSwift.com. So thank you so much.
All right. Well, after I spoke with you yesterday, I spoke with Denise, and I told her, I said, because Denise speaks extremely highly of you, and we're expecting great things out of you. And I'm going to say, when I start seeing her on that worldwide front, I'm going to say, I know Jaimee. I talked to Jaimee. Jaimee's been on my show. We knew Jaimee went.
Yes, and I'm so proud of you and Denise. I mean, you are amazing and a power and a force, and just thank you for all the work that you are doing and continue to do. And it's been an honor to be on your show. So thank you so much for your kind words and the seeds that you planted in me today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and keep the fight up, and let's see if we can make more of you. Let's see if we can make some Jaimee babies. Let's see if we can, and when I say that, I'm talking about activists and folks with some wherewithal, and they recognize and they become awakened, and they come alive, and they begin to connect the dots as to why we're saying what we're saying. It's not a matter of we're trying to put you down, or if anything, we're trying to lift you up, trying to lift all of us up. Because like I said, collectively, the way the president is going, because he is, and I hate to use the term pissing off on the radio. I hate using those words, but he really is angering a lot of groups simultaneously. And when they all collectively get together, it's going to be an uprising like never seen. But like you say, it won't be televised. It may not have a choice but to be televised. It's going to be that big. It's going to be, because all the groups are really, I mean, when he first got in office, like you said, you had the Women's March, because the women all came together around the world. It wasn't just U.S. The women around the world came together. So my feeling and my guess is, and my prediction is, you're going to have more worldwide participation as he begins to anger more and more of these groups. Because one thing I do know now, the world is much smaller than it was. I mean, when I start talking international travel, I've been all over Europe. I've been now to China on that part. I mean, all over the United States. Would not have thought of that as a kid, but now that's almost like every day for people. When I talk to people, oh yeah, I was in Italy last week, or I was in. So the world is a lot smaller now, with forces coming together. It may not be just a U.S. fight. That's my point in all of this.
Oh yes, definitely. There's always, and I hate the term third world, but third world advocacy and activism and transnational activism. There are activists in the diaspora that have laid the groundwork, and they're doing the work. And in fact, I believe many of them are the prototypes for the work, because we have people on the African continent doing the work. We have people in Europe, in the Caribbean, everywhere, in Latin America. They're doing the work, and what affects us in America also affects the world, but also what's going on in their respective countries. Is affecting them, with police brutality in Brazil and the fight for Aboriginal rights and land in Australia and all these other West Papua and all these other countries that are going through, the Afro-European activists that are going through things as well. And so we really need to come together and realize that this fight is an international one. To dismantle global white supremacy, because it is, in fact, global.
Absolutely right. Well, with that being said, I thank you for taking the time to rise and speak with me this morning. It's been a blast. And like I said, you've encouraged me at the fact your youth, vigor, youth, all of that has encouraged me that, you know what, maybe some of the things that we do and say is not in vain. There are folks coming up the pipeline who get it.
Yes, so thank you so much, and I look forward to, talking with you again. So thank you again.
All right, have a wonderfully blessed day, and we'll be in touch, because I've recorded it, and whenever I edit it and get the MP3 link, I'll get it to you, as well as the shows are archived for me on my YouTube channel. So it'll be up there as well.
Yes, thank you so much again. I look forward to it.
All right, take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. That ends another edition of the Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley, and another powerful interview it was. I don't know what to tell folks other than, if you really can't see what and how this president, what he's doing. And I don't know if it's calculating or if it's just plain old stupidity or a combination of both. But just think about that commentary from yesterday that he's making to police officers. And I'll leave it there because I didn't get into the political commentary this morning. I think Jaimee and I had enough time to do that. But I'll leave it there. Next week and the week after, the 5th and the 12th, I will not be on the air. I'm taking a couple of Saturdays off for vacation. Don't know where I'll be, but I'm not going to be here on next week and the following Saturday. But I will be after the 12th, God willing, whatever Saturday that is, we'll be back. But we're going to take a 2-week vacation from the Reading Circle, so you don't have to worry about getting up early, tuning in, as we will not be on the air. At least I won't be. So we've got a 2-week break, and then we'll be back 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from today, what have you. We'll be back on with some more exciting guests. So, all right. That ends it for now. We'll put on the good news in song for the last half hour. Gloria may call in, let you know what's going on in the gospel community. But as always, I thank all of you so much for joining. And hopefully the show is educational and entertaining and enlightening and inspiring.